Oh, hello world. What is up? Woo indeed. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We're here live at the Build Studio in New York City. Our next guest star in the critically acclaimed Broadway show, Jagged Little Pill, inspired, of course, by Alanis Morissette's 1995 Grammy-Award winning album. The show follows a typical suburban family navigating issues that are all too common today. If you haven't seen it yet, man, you are missing out. This show is fantastic. Please do me a favor, make a crazy amount of noise and welcome the great Elizabeth Stanley and Sean Allan Krill right here. Do it up.
Thanks.
Very nice. Gonna make you feel at home. Guys, congratulations. This show is wonderful. You're wonderful. I'm so excited you're here. How are you guys doing? How's life right now? I'm sorry you have to work on your day off, but I'm excited you're here. How you doing?
Thanks for having us.
Great. Yeah. No, we're feeling good.
Everything is great. It's a really...
It's February 2020. We're in a Broadway show.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty good. Right?
I saw, this was pretty cool. It was like a couple of weeks ago. You guys were at Barnes & Noble celebrating the release, the official release of the official cast recording. Huge moment in time. Very, very cool. That looked like a lot of fun. What was that like? How was that evening? How'd that go?
It was very exciting because, you know, we had recorded it sort of at the beginning of our rehearsal process for Broadway. So it was lovely to have a sort of official, you know, sharing with the world of this thing that we love so much, and to sing some of the tunes in, you know, kind of out of context and with a very intimate little audience. It was wonderful.
You know, I'm usually like laying in a bed with my eyes closed when Sean is singing Mary Jane. Right. So it was really nice to be like awake watching you sing it, you know. Yeah,
that's the thing, that's what I wanted to get to, right, is like not just the experience of celebrating the release, but also hearing it for the first time. It's got to be such a crazy out-of-body experience to kind of hear it, and I keep saying the word experience, but that's the only thing I can think of, like to sort of take in this show that you are so used to consuming and creating a certain way, and now here it is in this alien way. You get to sort of observe like a fraction of what the audience has. That's got to be wild. What was it like the first time you heard the recording and heard your show?
Ooh, it was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a little bit of the like, oh my God, is that what I sound like? That's a weird, you know, you got to get over that. Yeah. But yeah, really thrilling because I'm able to hear different things than I can hear, you know, through the backstage feed, or even, you know, like in Smiling, for example, I'm thinking about myself mostly and how do I sound? And
going backward.
Am I not running in anyone going backwards? Yeah. And so to like really be able to appreciate the incredible, insane vocals that the ensemble is doing was also like one of the huge things I loved in hearing the album.
Yeah, we had a listening party at Atlantic, and it was so thrilling. I remember our stage manager Ira saying at the end of it all, because we were all just completely dumbstruck by how exciting and how good it sounded actually, and then and he just said to us, you know, that's what I hear every night, but it is so different for us on stage, and it was just lovely to hear all of those you know, Tom Kitt's gorgeous arrangements of these amazing songs, and to hear them in that you know, cool rock album way. Yeah.
Very, very cool. What's it been like now, just sort of seeing the response from fans and from the audience, and just like all the great reviews coming in? You know, you guys worked so hard to put this thing together. I mean, the record you said you made when you were in rehearsals, and now here we are. It's been a couple of months. What is it like once this thing that you've worked so hard on is finally released to the world, and it's so well received, and people are having so much fun with it? How does that feel?
It feels like a dream come true. I mean, honestly, like there's so many times you work on something and you put just as much of your heart into it, and then people are like, that sucks, you know? And you're like, oh, that was my insides that you just stepped on. Yeah, so, and so it's like, I feel like I've had that experience enough times that it makes this even more special to be in something that it does feel like people are really getting something from and really loving.
Yeah, when we talk to people after the show, it isn't always the case. You can, as a performer, as a, you know, sort of someone who has helped create something, you can be passionate and think that it is the most amazing thing, and it doesn't always translate to an audience. It just doesn't, unfortunately. And it has been so wonderful the response to this has been just wonderful and overwhelming and so positive, and that's pretty great. It's pretty great.
You know, you touched on something, the fan interaction, and something I was really curious about. Like, and we'll get deeper into this, but the beauty of the show, every character is sort of putting a human face and experience to the headlines that we all kind of see. Everybody's dealing with something we're all familiar with in a way, and I'm curious what that translates to in terms of does that influence the conversation with fans, or are you guys, what kind of conversations are you guys, the cast, having, like, you know, between rehearsals and talking about all these different things that happen within this show?
It really does hit home for a lot of people, and many people. I think there is someone in the show that there are struggles we're dealing with in the show, depending on the character, that unfortunately many people in our country relate to on a very personal level, and it is heartwarming and humbling and very overwhelming at times, what people will open up and tell you after watching our show. But the show ultimately is about communicating, I believe, and opening up and sharing your fears and the sort of beauty of that and the bravery in that. And so I'm always just so encouraged, and I feel so, you know, hopeful when someone does say, "That was my life. Thank you for sharing that." You know, yeah. If I may, last year I went to a doctor, and we started talking about the fact that I was doing this show. Oh, well, what's it about? And I said, well, it is about a family dealing with several different challenges at once, primarily sexual assault and opioid addiction. And his face just dropped. And I said, are you okay? And we were just in the waiting room before the show, and he said, I just lost my daughter to an opioid overdose. And then he proceeded to basically say lines that I say in the show as the person that is the loved one of the person struggling with addiction. And I was just floored by it. This very, very suddenly human interaction, so real suddenly that, you know, you think as an actor sometimes you're doing something that is a little fantastic, a little not really based in reality. But unfortunately, there are many, many truths in the show that are touching home for a lot of people.
Well, that begs the question: when you found out, you know, or when you read the script and you know, and you're familiar with the story, and you know where you have to go and what you have to do. You know, we talk about how these are prominent issues. One of my other guests today, Dan Perez, he just released a book chronicling his addiction and his journey and his opioid addiction when he was working at Details. And it's just like, it has hit so much of this country. Talk about coming into this, processing the responsibility of the role. How did you prepare to sort of communicate and tell this story?
Yeah, I felt very intimidated by it's scary because it's so personal and so delicate, and is not something that I have lived specifically. And so I do feel a great responsibility to be as truthful and honest in the storytelling as I can be. So yeah, I did a lot of reading of books, you know, by people with similar stories, watching documentaries, and then also visiting with actual people who have loved ones, and then also people themselves who have are in recovery, and then likewise, you know, and that's just dealing with addiction, but the sexual assault stuff too was a little easier for me to understand from a firsthand perspective. I think just in some ways being a woman, being the age that I am, I definitely feel like I'm on the edge of my character sort of in denial about what she's experienced or how she deals with it. And I think that, like, we are in this great moment where the 19-year-olds in our cast, like, don't see things in the same way that people 20 years older than them do. And so that was kind of awesome to speak to women of all different ages about that, and how are you seeing this, and and then there are current events that have occurred during the time that we've been working on this that definitely provide fuel to the fire for wanting to portray this in a really accurate way.
I think you do an outstanding job of exactly that, and I think that's why it's resonating with people the way it is, and why you're having the interactions that you're having. Let's before we go deeper down that direction, let's dial back just for a second and talk about this record that the show is based on. It is not just a great record. It is one of those records that was like a moment in time for a lot of people. You can listen to this record, and it's one of those that transports you. And I'm curious what your relationship was like with Jagged Little Pill prior to being in the musical. When you hear the music, does it bring you back to a specific time? Like, do you feel transported?
Yes.
Yes.
Tell me about
Yeah, I mean, it's such a guilty pleasure. I think, like, getting to sing this and getting to sing it, on a stage, and it's loud, and you're in front of an audience. There's a part of that feels really like, yeah, this is how I always wanted to sing these songs. For me, I was learning to drive, I think, when the album came out, and so like these songs are forever. They remind me of being in the car with no parents.
Yeah. Well, oh my God, that's perfect. That is like,
Yeah.
mwah.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great car CD for sure.
Yes. Although my cousin was just telling me the other day, she's like, yeah, I remember I got my first CD player and I didn't have any CDs. And so I went to my brother and I looked at his collection and I was like, hey, can I have one of these? And he's like, I'll sell you one. And so for $15, the one she bought was Jagged Little Pill. I know. I was like, your brother was really.
Hustler.
Wow.
He was.
Wow. That's cold.
I'm selling this to you at a loss. I paid 18 for it.
Right.
We're related.
I know.
Sean, what's your connection to the record?
I mean, it was, I really do think it's one of those albums that's seminal. It defined a generation. It's like, it's like tapestry, or I don't know. Like there are certain albums that are just, they encapsulate a specific time. And for me, I'm about the same age as Alanis, so I was in my 20s. And it was formative. It was, for 2 years, it was the soundtrack of my life. I've said this many times, but it was just, it took me through breakups and falling in love and just there's just these beautiful, gritty, gorgeous human emotions told in such a wonderful, poetic way. And with that, her voice is so unique, and I don't just mean her singing voice, but her writer voice is so unique that it just, it was and really kind of continued to be everything for me, which is why I just constantly pinch myself. Like, I can't believe I'm in this show. I can't believe Mary Jane was always my favorite song on the album. So I cannot believe it every time we get to it in the show. Believe it.
I forgive my ignorance. I don't know the full extent to her involvement, but I know you worked with Alanis a little bit, and I got to imagine that's got to be hard to sing her music when she's in the room. What was it like working with her? What was it like to be in that presence and collaborate on this?
Okay, so I have to tell an Alanis story. The first time I met Alanis, she was very hands-on. She's amazing. She is one of the most giving, nurturing. She has goddess energy. She walks into her room and you just, she's so supportive. And, but the first time I met her was at, I believe we were doing we had about an hour left of rehearsal before we were going to do a run-through for her. So she comes into the rehearsal studio, and the one thing that we needed to work on was So Unsexy, which at the time took place in our closet, which meant that I was in my boxer shorts at the time. And I remember meeting Alanis Morissette, and then 5 minutes later, standing 5 feet in front of her in my underwear, singing a song of hers, and thinking, what is happening?
My dreams have come true.
You know that nightmare? You know that nightmare you have where you're in your underwear somewhere you're not supposed to be? Like, that's yeah. But she was so lovely, and just she's so excited about this project, and she has said that it feels to her like this iteration of this album, and meaning the Broadway show, it is as if the album was always supposed to be this, but she just didn't know it yet. And I'll let Elizabeth take over because she She
I can't top that. No, but I everything that Sean said, you know, she's incredibly generous, and I think she is so collaborative and game that I never felt like she was sitting there, because she was about this far away from me the first time I sang in front of her, but it felt like she was like truly like, wow. Like she just wanted to be a part of it rather than like, well, I have some notes. That's not how I sing it. You know, which is kind of like what she could do, you know? And I would be like, okay.
Right.
Yeah, no, she's really, really wonderful. She's not, sadly, in my cell phone. We're not there yet. But if you're listening, Alanis, I'm ready. I'm ready to take our friendship to that level.
You put it out in the universe.
You know?
Whatever. I texted her once. Okay.
You know, it's so funny to hear you sort of share her take on how it's like, oh, it was always meant to be this way, and I just didn't know it. And it's, you know, I feel like there's a whole bunch of sort of classic albums turned shows that have been coming out in the recent times, but this one does feel, as you're watching, like, wow, because there's so much in that record that I think it's easy to forget that it is an entire story. It's every emotion, it's every beat that you would need is there, and it lends itself so well to this format. When there's so much to mine and so much there, is there room for you to bring any of yourself to your roles? Or is it just trust what's there and trust what I've been given? How does that work as a performer?
Well, I'm going to speak for Sean as his scene partner. I feel like, yes, absolutely. I think every single person in our cast actually has made their roles what they are because of who they are. It was a really collaborative process, and we were really encouraged to do that. But, you know, I just know, because I'm his friend and being on stage with him, like, he brings his whole heart to it. And that's, you know, that's not something that's in the script. Diablo Cody wrote an incredible script, and, you know, and she has this great ability, I think, to help us be able to laugh and write great comedy while also talking about really serious things. So that's, I love that we get to also have some good zingers in there. But no, I feel like there's so much of who you are that if a different actor were playing that role, like, it would be a different character. Mm-hmm.
Well, and you know, same. That was really nice what Elizabeth Stanley
I'm just tossing it to you now if you want to say anything.
It's true.
Go ahead.
I mean, maybe not quite to the degree of how amazing I am. Come on. No, I mean, it's true. Because there is so much. Human beings deal with difficult situations with levity. That's common. Diablo Cody has an amazing way of putting that in our script. But Elizabeth found so much humor and a grounded, real, earnest, honest humor in this character that it was amazing to watch. MJ is who MJ is in this show because of Elizabeth. So and it's true all the way through the show. Everyone has been. It was such a collaborative process that I really do believe that all of these characters are what they are because of what the actors brought to it.
Are you guys, I always love finding out if this is something, not every performer does this, but they'll often sort of fill in the gaps that aren't on the page. Like we know there's a bunch of billable hours that Steve's making. Have you figured out what kind of cases Steve's working like in your head to help flesh it out? Like, do you guys create backstory? Oh, can you share any of that? That's fun.
Yeah.
What's something you invented for MJ? Something that helps you, and then we'll come back. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many things like the first candle that I light in the church, like for me, that's like for my mom, who I have an estranged relationship with. I mean, not Elizabeth, but for MJ. And then as soon as I leave the pharmacy, I'm on the street and I'm thinking, did she call other pharmacists? Is there another pharmacy I can go to? Well, I could go into the city, but I don't have time because my kids will know that I'm not there, and then I have to explain to Steve, okay. And then I'm in the scene in the coffee shop with the moms, and I'm scrolling my phone, and I'm thinking of people that I know that would have medication in their homes that I could just like stop by. Right. Wow. So that's like some of my
which is common
inner monologue.
It's common that people will steal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that they will go to people's houses and steal their drugs.
You have such a strong need. We also we created a little thing
I love this one
with us about that like the decorating of our Christmas tree is this historic thing in our relationship together, that it's a big deal. We do it every year. It's like
Date night.
Yeah. And
So when I forget it.
so he's like forgotten it. So it's not just like, whatevs, you know, the tree will get up. It's like a really deep cut.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I talked with Diane a little bit about this, and this is just a little secret that I have that I just love. But I think Steve works in medical law, and I think he works for, a big firm that represents like big pharma. So I think his job is to go and basically he's on the other side of this story, even though he doesn't realize it. That he's basically kind of like screwing the people who are unfortunately becoming addicted to these drugs, and he hates it. Yeah. Like morally, he is opposed to it. So what I love about the show is that I have my own secret, that it's not just that my job is taking me away from my family for these long hours, but I can't stand the work I'm doing because it's so that fuels me a lot. And then and then of course when it becomes very heated between us, it's
fascinating. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for pulling the curtain back and sharing that stuff. I just love hearing those little layers and stuff, especially for people that have seen the show. They can double appreciate it, or people going into it. It's just all this extra little detail and effort. It's very cool to hear. We're going to turn it over. We got some questions from the wide world. We're going to take one in just a second. I see one from Twitter here. We're going to get to you. I have one last question that I always ask when I have people of your talent and caliber on stage. It's not that exciting, but I think, but I'm very curious. We talked about this briefly downstairs, 8 shows a week. I made a joke about it. This is your day off. How, as people that have done, this is your career, you've done this, you're very successful at this. How do you keep the machine running? What is your self-care? How do you do this day after day, night after night, week after week? What are some secrets, things that you've done that have kept you going?
Sleeping.
Lots of sleeping.
Lots of water.
Water.
I'm
going to just say everything.
Yeah. Okay, good. This is going great. Elizabeth
is great. Elizabeth is great.
Great. No, sleeping and what? I mean, also with I like avoiding loud things, not talking on the phone forever and ever. There are things just like vocal preservation. But especially
what a great excuse to not have to talk on the phone.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
I'll just text you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but it's I think with doing a role that is emotionally taxing, sometimes actors get the reputation of being crazy, and I just don't think there's any need for actors to be crazy. But I just got to make sure that I'm like doing like things that are fun and laughing a lot and making sure I'm seeing friends and having a very full life outside of my job. For sure.
She's so good at that. She's much more good at sort of letting the show go than
good answer.
Very, very grounded person here. I'm a little bit more like I do. I try not to.
That's hard.
But it's weird. There's a lot of gaps in the show where as Steve, I'm just sort of sitting in confusion and frustration and anger and I want to let it go, but then there's like 30 minutes that I've got to sort of sit off stage and then come on with that frustration and confusion and anger, and so I try to have this happy medium of like keeping it but not, and then but I usually try to give myself a little ritual at night, like turn off the lights and say, okay, I'm leaving this here. I'm not Steve Healy. I'm gonna let it go and be happy.
Very cool. Well, thank you again for sharing that and let us in. All right, well, let's get to the wide world. I don't want to eat up all the time here. This first one's coming to us from Twitter. This is from Camille Fung. And the question is, question for the stars of Jagged Little Pill, the musical. How lucky. That's exactly who's here. What is something that you learned from your co-star or someone in your cast in general while being in this show? So something you've learned from the cast, be it your co-star, somebody else you've worked with, something you've learned.
You go.
I have to say, I learned we had many conversations about gender and sexuality and how we are talking about that and the words that we're using and the feelings that people have around it. We had many a conversation about that through the development of our show, and a lot of that was new information to me, and I felt like educated.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind for me too. I consider myself a a very open-minded, person, and the truth is, I spent an entire rehearsal one day misgendering one of our cast members and had no idea I was doing it, and I certainly didn't mean to, and then when I realized I had, I was just mortified, and but what was lovely is that I went to them and we talked and we shared and we explained and now I know and I learned something very important.
Great question, Camille. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, great.
I got at least 3 more. We're going to get to all of them. I promise. All right, first one, microphone right in the front. Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
Good. How are you?
Great.
Good. So you're both amazing. The whole show was amazing. My question is for Elizabeth in particular. Uninvited is my favorite Alanis song, in particular because it has this awesome Middle Eastern world music influence. And the version of the show in particular has this grand intro with kind of these Middle Eastern violins. Really stands out from most of Alanis' repertoire. So as the singer of the song in the show, what was your approach to the song, which is so sonically different in terms of its darkness and that kind of world musicness?
I know, I love that, and I love your attention to the musical detail. Yeah, I think, within the context of the show, I just approach all of the songs really from the acting standpoint first and, like, what's going on theatrically with the storytelling. And so for me, it was really about those lyrics and honing into you're not allowed, you're uninvited and unfortunate slight, and unpacking what that meant and who is the you. Which, so for me in that moment, it's like the version of myself that is the addict that I love because it's me, and also it makes me feel so good, but then simultaneously makes me feel so terrible. And so I think for me, that's the whole song is about that phrase.
Thank you for that. We got 2 more. Next one. You got a microphone? Oh, it's you. Go for it.
Hi.
You actually took my question, so I've got to think of a new one. So, you guys,
Go for it.
you guys have such an emotional roller coaster in this show. I was just wondering how you achieve that each and every night. Mary Jane, as you know, is one of my favorite parts of you, and just every moment that you're up there with all those tears flowing that we see. Like, how do you get there? How do you do that?
Some of it is, the course of the show takes you there. So it's not like you're starting from zero and just having to have a breakdown, So and some of it is that the great script and then the music also is, I think so emotional. Like, when you're watching a movie and like the violins start and you're like, oh, and so like a little bit, I think is helped by that. But I think also just like having a great scene partner and really being able to be present in the story that we're telling is how I do it. I don't know. What about you?
It's true. I mean, I have to say, the 95% of my show is this woman, as Steve, and so I'm the luckiest guy in showbiz because it's just easy. I think we had a trust from the very beginning.
I love you too.
I love you too.
Aww.
But it's true though, and the script is amazing. The music is amazing. It all it's a ride that we get on, and I always feel so safe because of all of those factors. I know the music is there. I know the script is there, and I know Elizabeth is there, and I know that we're gonna get through this together to the end, and we know that there's hope and a little bit of light at the end that we get to, and. So the tears usually just kind of happen because we're on the ride together.
That was a great Plan B question. Well done. That's a good one. We've got time for one more, and it's going to be you right here. Go for it.
Hi. Okay, my question and backup question were also both taken.
Plan C.
So Plan C, it kind of draws upon bringing yourself and keeping yourself separated from the show. Do you guys have any sayings or mantras or something that kind of keep you grounded doing such a heavy show 8 times a week?
I can't say that I've been like actively thinking one, but I recently found this thing I had painted several years ago. I like to do watercolor just like for kicks in my free time, and I painted in like the faintest light blue, Be Gentle. And I put that in my dressing room a couple weeks ago, and I just see it when I'm putting on my makeup. And I think like that's a good one, not only for like the character, but also with myself and, you know, doing a live performance every night. Like sometimes it doesn't go how you want it to. And like be gentle with yourself about that. And then also, you know, be gentle with the people around you, I think is originally what I was thinking of when I made that. So be gentle.
That's lovely. I have a version
Thank
of that.
you.
I usually, you're so gentle. I have a version of that. I usually, as I said, I turn off my light. I sort of apply, and what I usually say to myself is something along the lines of, I still care, but I'm leaving this here. And because I don't want to disconnect from this. I love this show. I love these characters, and I love this character, but it is, you know, in order to be gentle, I have to let it go a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
See? Well done. Very gentle. Very, very gentle. And we're going to wrap things up. We're kind of out of time, and it is your day off, so I do want to be respectful of that. But sincerely, thank you so much for hanging out here.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys for being a great audience. If you haven't seen the show yet, stop wasting your time and dragging your feet. Go to jaggedlittlepill.com, get some tickets, and go see this show. It is fantastic. It is such a great experience. And again, thank you to those who tuned in live and asked questions. You were wonderful as well. This is a very fantastic afternoon. I couldn't be happier. I hope you had a good time.
I had a blast.
Great time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
That
you
is
guys.
correct.
Thanks.
That, but louder for Elizabeth Stanley and Sean Allan Krill. Please, thank you.